Today, I have the extreme privilege of welcoming Dr. Amir Ghadimi, the CEO and founder of Lightium. And before launching Lightium, Amir earned his PhD doubly from the prestigious EPFL University and was a senior expert at CSEM. He is a highly accomplished researcher and inventor of multiple patents in the field of photonic components, materials, and manufacturing processes. Amir, welcome to the Spotlight. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Justin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to learning from you, and I'm sure our audience will gain a lot of insights as well. And I'm going to start with the same question I always do. There had to be a moment in your life when you knew you wanted to become an engineer. Can you tell us about it?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. It's been a one moment or more, but no, I mean, since let's say my childhood, I always loved to break things apart and then assemble them together. I suppose that's probably a good sign. So everything that was electronic at our house at some point, when I was a kid, got disassembled and then reassembled. But sort of when I was actually at high school, really, I mean, I'm coming from also a scientist, sort of family. So when I had the, how to call it, the entrance exam to the university, I mean, engineering schools was the, sort of typically the highest ranking and it's well respected. And this is what I was really good at, math and physics. So I just got enrolled into electrical engineering, and then having 20 years later, still neck deep into it.
Well, I guess that's the difference between engineers and those people who interview engineers. Is I was good at breaking things, I just couldn't put it back together.
The same. Actually, engineers just pretend to actually just been able to put them together.
Well, you got your PhD at EPFL, and then you spent years at organizations like Pattern and CSEM doing research. What do you attribute to gaining the confidence? Because that's one thing that it really takes to step outside of the lab and start a company and commercialize photonic technology.
Yeah, very good question. Actually, sort of, although since I was in an engineering school at bachelor level, I always was dream of having my own company. So this has been always at back of my head. And everything I work on, I just try to say, can we just make it sell it, right? I've been working on quantum related sensors and things like that, which has no application. And still, my mind was always selling something, but I never dared to do it because I think sort of I didn't have the right thing, right? And so I kind of followed what any other how to call it, academic do, just going to graduate school, and then after that, actually before coming to CSEM, I went to actually US to start sort of postdoc and faculty positions in the US, and ended up back in Switzerland at CSEM. By the way, Pattern is not an institute; it's actually just a European research project that I coordinated. So ended up back in at CSEM, and they're leading a new research group and research team related to integral photonic. And finally, sort of through all of these efforts, we landed on that killer things that I thought that has really potential of my lifetime, right? So to making a founder, sort of let's say fatherhood is very different, like fatherhood to many different people. For me, the most important things was a legacy, and I wanted to do something that actually, when I look back in my 80s, I'm kind of be proud of. And finally, we had everything else that I had in my career before working on this technology we are now doing. I had to go and try to actually really shove it to sort of people's throat to actually sort of accept it. But now we got upon a technology that people coming to us and then saying, actually, we never when I started to doing TFLN, I never set out to do the startup that I want to do. It was yet another research topic, and then ChatGPT happened, and then suddenly the demand for this ultra high-speed interconnect become skyrocketed. So this has actually pushed us. Actually, our customers really pushed us. So I was in this research institute, and then we were kind of struggling to actually scale beyond what we can do within research institutes. And with it, what took a lot of guts. So we had so we decided with my co-founder to quit, or how to call it, high-paying jobs, and then just put our own money into actually building a startup. And now been 3 years later, I only have one regret in my life: why I just didn't quit earlier.
Wow. Well, I love to hear that. And that light bulb moment, was a slow burn. It was like a candle, rather than the
Absolutely.
Ben Franklin light bulb. Now, for those that aren't familiar, what is Lightium doing? What are you guys building?
Well, as the how do you call it, the name goes, it has something to do with light, and as my background said, it has something to do with the wafers and chip manufacturing. So when you combine light and semiconductor, that's lithium, right? So what do we do? Lithium, we really a semiconductor chip manufacturing company based in Zurich, and we design, manufacture, and sell chips based on a new material platform called Thin Film Lithium Niobate. I mean, we're kind of an interesting, semiconductor company because we are a semiconductor-less semiconductor company. Because the material is actually not even a semiconductor; it's a special type of glass that you see it here, which is a thin films of it is deposited on silicon wafer, and then we sort of manufacture. What is so special? What should you care? I mean, these materials, is really good at controlling light. I mean, what is on this, sort of chips that you see? The functionality of these chips are no different than literally the light switch that you have in your virtual, background right there. And what do? Is just they are kind of glorified miniaturized light switch. They just 10 light on off, and that's how we send like data in optical fiber, like on off 0101. With the difference that if you could 10 on and off your light switch like 400 billion times every second, right? So we say put four of these light switch next to each other is a one chip which sends like 1.6 terabit per second, or if you put eight of them, like in 3.2. So they're really fast, and and what they do is really energy efficient. And right now, actually, it's less, so in the last 15 years, when you look at AI infrastructure, it was always about making bigger and, better compute chips, like better GPUs and bigger GPUs. And now more and more we go into the AI, it's becoming more and more relevant is not, what chips you have, how can you wire several chips so they can cluster into a bigger compute unit. So interconnect is really the next trillion-dollar company, and this has to be very fast and very efficient. And what we are building is a sort of next generations of chips that is going to interconnect the GPUs in the data center.
Interesting. And this has always been the material of the future, but the challenge has always been manufacturing reliability at scale. What has Lightium figured out that will allow for large scale production of TFLN?
Absolutely, like TFLN, so as the demand for this AI infrastructure and bandwidth is how to call it increasing, the traditional copper, or like even when you go to photonics like silicon photonic, no longer work, right? And people need to actually scale this beyond the sort of what traditional semiconductor materials can do. And TFLN is one of those that actually can allow a scaling beyond this state of the art, right? Why is that? Because this has this magical ability to control light on a chip very fast and very efficiently, like faster than what they can do with semiconductor and more energy efficient. So these attributes, make it the darling of industry. So now there can many adequate sort of people pursue this, and but the catch is that like lithium niobate is, which has lithium in it. Lithium is a CMOS contaminating agent, right? So you cannot just like silicon photonic go to like a TSMC fab and then just start producing TFLN, because if you do, you're going to contaminate the line. So so for many years, like where a lot of people show that this material is really good. In an academic clean room, we have more relaxed contamination issues, so people would show coming paper after paper that showing how good this material is. But if you are, let's say, like transceiver manufacturer, and you want to to make chips, you go to Tower or Global Foundry or TSMC, so make those chips for you. If you wanted to make a chip in TFLN, there were nobody who can go and then that they can manufacture it for you. So your choice was to invest in hundreds of millions in building a fabrication line. That is what Lithium is started to change. So we brand ourselves as TSMC of TFLN. So we set out to sort of develop like the largest manufacturing part, like how to call it, manufacturing company in the world, a foundry for TFLN. And what we have been doing in the last 3 years to crack up, how can we get, that success that, being demonstrated, and then scale it to something that you can actually, produce it in millions with a decent enough, yield that you can actually have a commercial product, right? And I would say there are many, aspects of, scaling this. Of course, you need to find the proper, sort of partner and proper line, and it's huge is about actually making a supply chain. I mean, it's not about making one hero sample works. If you want, sort of millions and millions of this work, you need to have the whole supply chain, ready. And so we work from, we control the supply chain from where the material is almost mined, like the crystal, like, original ingot of lithium niobate, it is packaged into the final product, right? We control this entire supply chain. Some aspects we do ourselves, and then some aspects we outsource to subcontractor. I would say the key is one thing to actually controlling that, yield was data and measurements, where we, like many other companies, invested in final product and, manufacturing lines. Lightium went all in testing and metrology. So we built one of the most state of the art tests and, metrologies. So we can actually, while we outsource some of the processes to subcontractors, we control the quality at the end, right? We observe and control quality. And this is, turning into one of our, how to call it, unfair advantages that the amount, just to give you the perspective, like, to how much measurement we make, insane amount of, sort of metrology measurements. Like, we measure every single PDK component in every single reticle and every single wafer to that extent. Right now in our database, we are making about 800 million data entries per month. So 800 million measurements every month. And this data allows us to understand every single, sort of process edge, every single defect that can go, every single thing that actually can impact the yield. And we build massive, sort of AI and, LLM models and large, how to call it, neural networks to actually connect. And we can actually like look at an image, and then, already by looking at and like training on so many like successful and unsuccessful images, that tells you this wafer is going to turn out good or not, or what is going to be the, yield issues, right? So that's the really, I would say, the secret sauce, that data, and, the amount of sheer amount of measurements. We went really all in. We, how to call it, we put every money we had, and then just borrow even more, and we continue borrowing even more, and then just, putting all of that in just testing and metrology. And I would say this is a key.
Excellent. Well, and I appreciate you sharing that. Now, one of the things that has me just thinking back to some other recent conversations that I've had with CEOs at different companies in Europe is this correlation between, there's a lot of manufacturing that's happening, but also a lot within the photonic space. And every region seems to have its area of dominance. North America is dominating in compute. Asia is dominating in memory, and there's just this really coalescence of domination in terms of photonics. Why do you think that that's happening, and that there's such an advantage in this space in Europe?
Well, I mean, sort of traditionally, like, how to call it, sort of in Europe, unfortunately, sadly, we are in a very dire situation in the whole, semiconductor sort of supply chain. And, one of the things that actually, people, how to call it, often, how to call it, underestimate is that chips, right? Essentially, yes, it's design is very important, but chips essentially 90% is about manufacturing, right? And we very successfully managed to unlearn manufacturing in Europe, right? That's what we are good at. Nothing, like, sort of, when it comes to semiconductor, I mean, computes, sort of, and memories, or these are the things that actually are very high volume, markets. Like, we are talking about millions of wafers per month, right? And since we are extremely bad at actual manufacturing, and manufacturing culture and ecosystem in Europe is like, sort of horrible compared to any place. Like, Korea, a country of 30 million, has better, much more manufacturing than any entire European Union combined, right? So, giving that perspective, like, we can actually make no difference on a global, like sort of thing, in global arena on the, businesses of computes and, memory. But photonic, I mean, Europe has been always very strong with, how they call it, IP creation and, innovation. So while for, like, Europe is extremely weak at valorizing those innovations, because it requires, sort of how to call it, a culture of manufacturing, ecosystem of manufacturing. On the other hand, we've been very good at actually innovating and creating, how to call it, IP. And photonic is still a very, high-end, low-volume market by comparison. And because of this heritage of research and IPs, sort of photonic industry in Europe is very strong. But having said that, I mean, we still, very quickly losing it. Same way that actually we lost semiconductor and big tech to the other regions. I mean, now photonic is in the US, and also China is becoming the market leader in photonic these days. Because again, like, we have a lot of good innovation, we just cannot turn them into value because we cannot scale them. I mean, we are, how to call it, having the same issue in Lithium. We develop these awesome technologies, and we looked for manufacturing partner. Like, we looked desperately. We, went every single, fab that almost I can tell you now we talked to. We could not find a single, how to call it, reliable manufacturing partner. And even us had to go to US. And soon we gave up on Europe and go to Asia because, yeah, I mean, just the manufacturing culture in, Europe is just horrible. Like, is so I have such a, how to call it, a horrible memory. So that's a bit of a things. We're trying to keep, some, high added value processes in Europe, such as testing and design. But even us could not actually keep the manufacturing in Europe. And, currently we went to US to actually do the manufacturing.
That is interesting, and maybe in a future conversation we'll have to double tap on that a little bit, because it is interesting, especially in Germany where you're based. The culture of
Zurich.
Or Zurich.
Yes.
The culture of manufacturing for decades was extremely strong and proud. But just to pivot a little bit away, you hinted at a previous conversation we were having about some exciting news coming, and I want to pull the veil back as much as we can. Can you tell us what you were hinting at, or at least give us a little bit of a sneak peek?
Absolutely. I mean, there are several, really cool things that are happening at Lithium that, some I can talk today and some I cannot, yet talk. I wish actually we already had a press release. One of the exciting news was relating, or, sort of funding. So we've been actually, how to call it, doing, a lot of fundraising in the past, how to call it, 6 months. And actually, this is the first time I'm actually, sort of disclosing it to any partner, but I'm really happy and proud to say that by end of June, we actually closed the first tranche of our Series A fundraising. So our company is now, so we had our, first, fundraising seed round in September of 2024, which we've been operating. And now the company is, sort of scaling. So we needed to actually inject even more capital to, continue this growth. So yeah, I'm happy to actually sort of announce, that, we have, closed at least the first tranche of it. We haven't, sort of finished the, Series A. That's why I was wishing by this in a how to call it, interview, all the press releases out. I can disclose the amounts, but it's actually pretty large. So it's going to be one of the biggest, so probably photonic raise at the Series A level in Europe, which allows us to actually continue to grow. The company is about 33 people, and then our aim is that actually we be about 50 plus by the end of the year, and then continue to grow. And the other part is about actually that I cannot go into much of the details about the traction. So we've been actually sort of very, very successfully, sort of demonstrating our technology. As I mentioned, we're going to show this a bit in ECOC, but the maturity of the technology is incredibly high. And that is, at the point that actually we are now starting to go from like really some pilot project to this year soon, we're going to sign, sort of several very large manufacturing contracts with real customers, which we hopefully to, like if the press release allows, these are probably one of the biggest ones in photonic, at least in Europe, right? I mean, of course, in China is a different, magnitude, and in US the market of the fund capital is, very high. But I think, within the European scales, we did a pretty good job both in fundraising, actually converting, sort of, how to call it, prototype into actually really large. So soon we will be able to actually sort of share the first modules of 1.6 terabit coming out of our sort of our production line.
Wow! Well, congratulations, and much kudos. When do you plan on having the Series A completely closed?
I think sort of with the pace that we are going, it's the round is already oversubscribed, so we had to already sort of a bit increase the sort of target. But I would say probably by the end of the summer, we aim to close it. So we already closed one. We had the first closing already end of June, and but since the interest was higher, so we are planning to do also a second closing, and then how to call it, hopefully announce it by the end of summer.
Well, excellent. Now, you're talking about growing a startup, and you and I both know it's challenging. And I love that you were talking about scaling, because as we wrap up the conversation, I want to ask a couple questions around that.
Yes.
Because you're at 33 people, growing to 50. So as you're doing that, every hire matters, because
Absolutely.
it is so important not only that you compel the right people to join, it's equally, if not more important, that you repel the ones that you don't want. And they're not bad people, but you want to
Not a good fit.
repel the
Right.
bad cultural fit, the people who are not going to align. So can you talk to us a little bit about the things that you look to aggressively filter out of the company?
Yeah, very good question. And I have to say is that especially at the beginning of our company where our brand or name was much lesser known, we struggled a lot to actually hire. And I can tell you, so we have this, sort of app that we're using for hiring that gives us the nice statistics. I was checking it out recently, and our success rates on, candidate is less than 2%. So we interview about 50 plus people for one single, sort of how to call it, position. And we really, really do, sort of, this seriously. And I can tell you a few points, but I just wanted to say is that I would say, I always say that as founders and, CEO, probably hiring is our most important job together with fundraising, right? So what I wanted to say is that, and again, this is a very, how to call it, seasonal things, like, because your challenges, the skills, in different position of the company. So hiring was a big challenge, but we a bit improve along the way. We had to, of course, onboard few people who are really, really good at this job and help us, but we also have to learn our style and also build our culture. I mean, there are many things that actually you can do to to build a culture, and there are a lot of things and talks that tells you, but I can say by experiences most of them are bullshits. The culture of the company is built with the first 20 people you hire. That's it, right? So that determines the culture of the company. So what I can tell you is sort of, let's say I've been personally grown a lot as a person going through this sort of massive hiring phase. I'm still involved with every single hire we had. We really, really go into tech, and the sheer amount of time we spend actually on spending with the candidates. And what I can tell you, from my beginning of my time as an engineer, as a scientist, as like a nerd, at the very beginning when I was hiring, like I was like probably like any other co-founders were really intimidated by skills, right? And I just value the skills above everything else. So I was just looking for the best expert in the field, right? And as I get more and more experience, and still I'm in the middle of journey. Like if you ask me 1 year from now, probably like will come with a bit of a different opinion. But now we value traits far more than skills, right? We must learn how to call it, if you don't know how to like manufacture this, how to spin coat a resin, we can teach you, but we cannot teach you to be ambitious. We cannot teach you to be hardworking. We cannot teach you, like, you have to come with that trait, right? And for us, as a company, we are looking, we realize we are looking for very special traits of people. That's why, like, as a CEO, I always tell to sort of most of candidates, like, I don't recommend working for Lightium for 90% of people. If you're looking for a job, just a job, it's a horrible place to work with, right? But if you're crazy and you're looking for a bunch of other crazy to match your crazy, and you want to build this is the right place, right? So it's like I realized that actually we have to, and again, we've been very successful. Actually, there has been lifetime of a company, there's been only one single person that we wanted to sort of retain, and he wanted to leave, and then we had to fight and couldn't keep him. But we had to also how to call it, sort of either let some people go, or sort of some people sort of went, and then we kind of sort of so we're very happy about it. But so we always take a pride of our retention of the people we want to keep is very high. It doesn't mean we never let people go, but one of the things that actually I learned was, now I'm getting more and more, is like really hire slow, fire fast, right? If you have a red flag or an orange flag or even a yellow flag is gonna only yellow flags is gonna only turn into red flag, and red flag is gonna multiply. So one bad apples really, really, really impacts the rest of the basket. So is for us right now, we put a lot more emphasis on the traits of people rather than the skills of people, and this is a really completely learning camp, because when I started the company, I was completely the opposite.
No, very, very valuable insight there. And so, as we wrap up, because we know how challenging it is to not only identify but to attract the right people, because every company is looking for similar talent these days.
Absolutely.
If you were talking to an engineer, business leader who currently has a role, is happily employed, but is curious about what Lightium is doing, and you want to move them from curious to talking with you and your team, what would you tell them?
Yes, I would tell them, look, if you're happy with your job and you're looking for a job, just stay where you are. But if there's something wrong with you deeply, and there's something missing with you, and you're just looking for something crazy and ambitious people, and you want to grow, just come talk to us. And we are building one of the most important challenges in the and how to call it the next decade. And we are very ambitious. We want to build, and I think we will build the next NVIDIA of the world. And if you want a part of it, every single member of our company is a shareholder to the company. Every single member, right? Sort of, we make the people really like with very good sort of stock, so they own the part of the things. But what we really actually sort of value the most is this vibe, energy, and craziness, right? So is if you're looking for something that you never would sit and relax, and you're just growing, that's what we sell, right? Crazy. What all like my like somebody asked me is again, how do you describe Lightium in 3 words? And this is my 3 words: crazy, ambitious, fast. Right?
I love it. Crazy. Yeah, here, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you give me a story of a success that you achieved, a milestone, whatever it may be, a story that you experienced at Lightium personally that would personify that ethos of crazy,
Yes.
ambitious, and fast?
Exactly. So the one is sort of about this data that actually we do. Like, one of the challenges that actually, how to call it, we were faced was that imagine at any given moment of like building this wafer is like building like, like how to call it, like buildings, right? You build it like floor by floor, right? So like, several tens of floors is, sort of, or building is. Imagine at any given moment of time, we are dealing with like hundreds of wafer. Each wafer has, one wafer could be floor 3, one wafer could be floor 5, etc., right? And then each wafer have like hundreds of components on them, like reticle, tens of reticle, each reticle tens of chips, each chip tens of components, right? How would you track all of this? And we had to build an entire company within our company, which was just data. Realized that actually, and I was very, one of these, sort of crazy, ambitious, fast was that somebody came to us and said, look, you guys are gonna, crash if you don't, correctly, build this data infrastructure. And we were smart enough to listen to that person, and we hired them. And then with like, so under a job of under 6 months, they built a PLM and ERP system homegrown that is better than the most state of the arts, and to get us in a sense that we make 800 million measurements, and you can actually show me a single image, it's SEM of a paper. We can tell you exactly from which wafer it comes, from which location, from which step of manufacturing, who measured it, and what the condition. And this was built in under 6 months with about 1 million line of codes, right? So, and I don't even speak that language. We just trusted the guy who knew what he was doing, and under 6 months he built something that actually now this is becoming probably the most valuable thing in our company, right? So that is the story I would say. Like, we give people the autonomy to build this, and just yeah, just if you're crazy and you know what you're doing and you want to sort of find like so you're crazy, find another crazy which actually resonate, we are the guys, right? And we are, what we always say, like we are bold and have balls the size of melons, so you can actually just, we are taking risk, right? If you want to have somebody who actually go crazy, and take risk, here is a guide, right? So if you want to have a relaxed, 9 to 5, well-defined job, we are a horrible place. But if you're hungry, you want to change the world, and then you're willing to take risk, and then people taking risk with you and grow, that's the right place.
Well, you know what? In October, I'm not going to be too far from Zurich, and I think that just talking with you, I got to meet you in person. So you've got it first. You've got it first in 4.5 years of the C-suite spotlight. No one has ever talked about balls the size of melons, so I love it.
Well, if you're in Zurich, I definitely invite you to come and see our facility. You will see our clean room in Zurich. We are expanding actually by 3x. And one of the news that actually I wanted to share is we took over the whole floor of the building as of 1st of July. So we are massively constructing. We are constructing an additional 200 square meter clean room and 1,000 square meter of an office area. So it's a massive amount of investments to be done to bring us to the scale of manufacturing and testing volume that we want. So if you want to see it in action, just message me. Happy to give you a tour of the facilities in Zurich.
Well, I'm going to hold you. I'm going to hold you to that, and really great to meet you for the first time. And this is one where I sincerely will say this: until we meet again, until we talk again, and hopefully 6 or 12 months, there's more announcements to be coming. So we'll have to chat again, Amir.
With 100%, with pleasure.